Доброго дня, шановні колеги.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome. Ukrinform agency continues our presentation. Today's topic is what we can expect from France in terms of the Russian-Ukraine war. We'll be talking about French stance, the impact of the French election and the Ukrainian factor in that process. We will also be talking about the French diaspora in France, their impact, the directions of a possible cooperation, not only reducing the subject to humanitarian issues. I would like to give the floor to Alla Lazareva, who is deputy chief editor of the Ukrainian Week journal. I'm glad to see and hear everybody. Since I am one of yours, I will give an overview of the political situation in Ukraine. France is important because it's the president of the European Council now. It was part of the Normandy process, although it's dead now, but it is an important factor. And of course, in the European Union in general, after the French presidency, France still remains a powerhouse of Europe. And for Ukraine, it is an important partner. From the beginning of war, the French president Macron was very active. Of course, he is running his own campaign, but he has taken it as his habit to phone on everyday basis, either to President Zelensky, to President Putin. He also visited Kiev. And of course, it leaves us some kind of window to render our messages to Europe. At long last, France has launched a military aid. It was not from the very beginning. They were dithering for a long time. Why? Because the pro-Kremlin lobby is very active there, and pro-Kremlin lobby and economy is tied to Russia. And the French business circles are reluctant to leave the Russian market, but Danone and other companies, Total including, unfortunately, are staying in Russia and working and doing their bloody money in Russia. The main focus of the community is focused on the effort to make these businesses leave Russian Federation unless the bloodshed in Ukraine stops. What do? On Saturday, we boycotted the premises of Merlin. The police intruded, but then the activists were left alone. They brought in the different signs, gave out some materials, and this is a street activity, but there is a political side of that. We are writing and turning to different policy makers. And since President Zelensky talks to President Macron every day, it seems that our president reminds the French vis-a-vis of what we expect from French. There is another area which is politically important and must be promoted in the dialogue with France. This is the issue of embargo on Russian oil and gas. Now, it is clear that technologically you cannot put a ban on that overnight, but it looks as if the French businesses are now getting prepared for the use of alternative sources of energy. They've got a plan where 20% of gas that they receive from Russia, and of course 20% is not a figure comparable with that of Germany. They're putting forward a plan to switch over to renewed energy resources, including different kinds of biomass generation of energy. Our effort is this: the money that France owes to Russia for the energy, of course, will be scrapped away by the next Russian government that will stop the Ukraine war. So we want to make sure that France does not pay the bill for this bloody war. According to our sources, I saw an information that some relative gatherings happened in the French government. It looks as if with some time and with the efforts of our diplomacy, these plans will come into fruition. There are other options. For example, to make the tie between the money that France owes to Russia for gas will be paid after the hostilities have ceased. This is one of the options. This is what we can expect of them in real terms. We should be aware that France is now engaged in very active presidential campaign, and the leading candidates are the current president Macron, who is not in much haste to provide close skies over Ukraine, and perhaps one of his biggest rivals, Marine Le Pen, the right-wing leader, used to be called Front National. It is financed by the Kremlin. It holds an active pro-Kremlin position. Now she seems to be a little bit tacit, but I don't think, with all the drawbacks of Macron's politics, he is for Ukraine a better candidate than Marine Le Pen. I think it makes sense if I answered your questions. If there are questions, I'm ready to answer them. Ladies and gentlemen, you can provide your questions through chat, but I would like to ask this humanitarian aid, the fact how France is helping our um, refugees, what is the social guarantees? Because when we talk about Poland, we know a lot of information, but France seems to be under the radar. I met the mayor of Paris, a woman who is also running for the French presidency. She clearly supports Ukraine, but unfortunately, she's got only 2 to 3% of support nationally. She is not likely to be the runner-up, but she is active in her readiness to receive Ukrainian refugees, provide settlement for them. Situation is difficult. France has claimed that they are ready to take up about 10% of the Ukrainian refugees currently in the territory of the European Union for their time of war. This is quite a ballpark figure, but as in the European Union, the refugees who have come after the 24th of February to receive a status of a temporarily refugee called the temporary protection, you must be registered with the local authorities. Then you receive the right to work. You are provided a temporary settlement. Basically, it means that you are uh, living with other people in their houses. There are people who are ready to host our refugees. They provide information whether they are ready to host our refugees. I also know that some hotels are inviting our refugees, and I was providing humanitarian aid to our refugees. Not far from the airport near Paris, there were people from Kharkiv and Kiev region, people, ladies and girls, who left their houses with what they could carry, which is a minimal amount of everything. The linen, the clothes are not available, uh, are not something they took along. They told me that they will go to some other provinces, and of course, capital city is more reluctant to provide shelter to the Ukrainian refugees. Although our people are inclined on staying in the capital city, there are more opportunities to work. They are searching for places to live in the vicinity of Paris rather than going elsewhere. And for those registered, they're provided with financial
Скажіть, а
help
можна ще таке питання з приводу
and so on. There's another issue,
люди втрачають
the
роботу в українському
work, because
країні,
people are
і
losing
чи є
their
така
jobs in
робота у
Ukraine.
розвитку?
They
І
move to another
в якому
country.
напрямку
What
взагалі нас
is the
підтримує Франція у
how
цьому
does France
напрямку?
support
Чи є
us?
кошти,
What
допомога,
is
спрощення
the
проживання? А можливо, в
efforts
українській
in
діаспорі
terms
також
of
люди
providing
знаходяться?
jobs?
Дуже цікаво.
Of course, if you know French or at least you know English, the situation is better for these. But I know that some chains are prioritizing Ukrainians to give the floor. Some work is available at the farms. Some agricultural complexes have announced that they are ready to employ Ukrainian refugees. So the job placement is available rather from the provinces. But to say that they are open to provide work for our people, you cannot say that. But of course, we will know that there are some abuses of taking advantage of the refugees. That is to say that there are examples when our refugees are trying to abuse the rules and bend the rules to get the registration and get the job in France. Getting job in France has always been difficult, and some people are abusing their status. There are building work. Of course, it's more for men, but the lion's share of refugees is composed of girls and women. And if there are men coming, it's either boys or older people. Of course, there's a caretaking jobs, taking care of children or of the seniors. There are communities that are offering such jobs. So I think people get some job there, since no one was preparing for such a war, especially here, where we placed our hope that there will be some appeasement of the aggressor. If the aggressor country is not provoked, if they will not launch a war. So no, everybody was caught napping. Thank you, Alla, for your exhaustive report. And I would like to give the floor to the head of the French-Ukrainian organization Crossing Ukraine.
Так кажу трошки, ми вже завантажуємо зранку бус з гуманітарною.
As we are now loading the humanitarian aid to Ukraine, to Ivano-Frankivsk region in particular, we have been asked to provide some hygiene things for children, for women, and also we are providing different kinds of foods. We have placed our emphasis on the small buses because it's easier for them to reach Ukraine as compared to the big trucks. The French people are very active in helping us. They've been helping Ukrainians big way. Many activists come to us, write to our website with their proposals. They send different goods, and there are people who are writing to us, for example, doctors who have wartime experience, and they're ready to go to Ukraine and ask us to send them to the Ukrainian hospitals to help the wounded. There are French people, men in particular, who are hiring trucks. They come to our place, load the trucks, and go to the Ukrainian border where the Ukrainian associations receive this aid. Private persons also come to us with their help. Some people bring just one bag of food or something. Well, there are organizations that are helping in a bigger way. So the French are trying to help Ukrainians as best as they could. I will give you an example of a family who have just arrived here with 6 children, 4 of them coming from Ukraine, and the director of our private school has immediately enrolled these children into her school. And these children attend French school every day. They're taking French language classes. There is a volunteer French teacher who knows Ukrainian, and she has taken upon herself to get those children adapted to live in France. I would like also to add that about 85% in general are supporting Ukraine. In other words, the French sentiment is in favor of Ukraine, although the 15% is representing the Kremlin lobby. So people are readily opening their houses. People write to me that, for example, I've got a room available that I can spare in my house. People are also inviting our refugees with their pets. Now, of course, we should not forget about other diasporas. For example, the Georgian diaspora, apart from the fact that they are joining us in our rallies, they come every day to ask whether we need some strong men to help us with loading, unloading. The Georgians have also provided with us with a great supply of medicines. In this respect, we are not alone. We have not been abandoned. We feel that the Ukrainian cause is supported. I think that we receive a lot of help in these misfortunate, troubled times. Ms. Yulia, you have mentioned education. I'm sure that there are a lot of Ukrainian women who come to France with their children. What your advice would be at the first step, how to get their children either into the kindergarten or into the school, how to find a French language teacher? What is the algorithm of your actions? Of course, you cannot stop stop your living. You have to live as normal as you can. In the first place, you should know that there are no kindergartens here in France. Until 3 years, they go to what we call kindergarten, and then they go to the primary school. To the best of my knowledge, as I have talked to the director of the school where I live, I know the following. You've got to go to the mayor of the community, and the mayor himself or herself will pass a decision. My understanding is that Ukrainian children are welcome here, although there is a language barrier, but teachers say that they use the Google Translate service, and children are studying step by step. Of course, at first, children are frustrated. Sometimes they don't know how they will communicate with their French peers. Sometimes they attend school only in the first half of the day. And now the Ukrainian children claim their right to go to the school right from the morning. They seem to be not afraid of the language barrier. Children are very apt at adapting, and they try to use pictures. French children are painting the drawings for our children to indicate the meaning of the words, and we've got some 11-year-olds who are now taking mathematics class, they're taking natural science classes. As for the French language, our school has found a French language teacher. They have placed an announcement, and they have found a lady who will volunteer to teach French. But I think the situation is different in every single city. But in general, the Ukrainian refugees have the possibility of studying French. And of course, there's a network organized by the local communities for the Ukrainian refugees to study French. There is a database where you can see the city or a settlement or a village. The information is available on the proposal that they are ready to make available. Of course, people in the Ukrainian embassy will also know. I think it's the cultural center that is coordinating this. Indeed, I think perhaps embassy is too busy to deal with these issues, but they are they have created a site together with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and the Ministry of the Interior of France, where they have put up a detailed information for the Ukrainian refugees, what to do, what the first step is, what the second step must be, and so on. So there is a lot of explanation of that. Thank you, Yulia. Thank you, Alla. Dear friends and colleagues, since if you have questions, you are welcome. I will leave the electronic mail for you to put your questions, and later on we'll be able to answer your questions. And of course, we've got a question. Olena Miloserdova, Ukrinform agency. A question of more political and military nature. What is the vision of the French authorities? How do they see a further development in Ukraine? How does French government see the end game? What is the prognosis of the expert community now that it is clear that there is no way to find an agreement with Putin because he breaches every single agreement? France says that they're not against Russia, but they support Ukraine. This everyday phone calls to Zelensky and phone calls to Putin every other day are reflected by the information that people ask, why should you call Putin since he is not going to negotiate? And one of the aides to Macron says that we are preparing for the situation when the peaceful agreement has been struck. So their vision is that negotiations will bring some results, a peaceful agreement will come into fruition. And after that, they will resume this telephone conversations, telephone negotiations to make sure that after the peace has been achieved, this is their major vision. As for the time frame, when will this happen? What conditions will be for the peaceful agreement to be signed? What is Ukraine ready to accept? What is unacceptable for Ukraine? This realm of issues still remains out of the loop. It's in the foggy area. When we talk to the experts, we understand that the closer you are to the French experts, the less they're ready to accept their responsibility for what has happened. Let me remind you that according to the Budapest Memorandum, France was one of the guarantors of this 1994 document, and France promised, among other countries, a protection in case of aggression. Now that Ukraine is under a direct aggression of one of the signatories, it looks as if France should have been more active in defending us from the aggressor country. But what is happening is that they're saying that this memorandum has not been registered in the International Register of Agreements. There are some formal pretexts not to oppose Russia directly. They're saying that since we are waging a financial, economic war against Russia, this is enough. We can only imagine if Putin thought of bombing France or Paris, situation would have been different. They're looking for some pretext. You see, this is the reality negation, a collective negation of reality, because they are lagging behind in their understanding. I would say that the French elites are lagging behind in understanding the Ukrainian realities. I'm not sure whether I have asked your questions. Thank you, you have. Dear colleagues, do you have more questions? If there are no more questions, we will wrap up this online event. Thank you. If I understand it correctly, there are no more questions. I would like to ask Ms. Lazareva and Ms. Yefremova for their expertise, answers. Thank you, and hold out. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Goodbye.